parking there for the amenity center, the restaurant, and the function space. There's a big space there. Along both sides of the institutional building, on the north side and around the back side on the southwest, and along the western wall, are going to be parking spaces all the way around that building, all done in green technology. There'll be no parking on the common. There'll be no parking in front of the Nichawag except for loading and unloading.
Quantified parking.
Well, code will do that, and zoning's going to do that. So in some cases, some municipal regulations say 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit.
You haven't done that calculation.
Well, that's part of our zoning application. We have to determine.
I went through it, and based on what I could understand of your proposal and the types of use and the current zoning regulations of this town, it came out to something like 324 spaces.
I can't imagine where you got that number, sir. How can you possibly have been that high?
It's a big building. You read the code.
Occupancy is the issue.
I know.
And if you've got 38
If I
residential...
take the proposal that you made, apply the same areas to it, same uses, you get 194 spaces. So I just want to see your calculations, and I would love to see a site plan that puts all this stuff on the ground,
You're
deals
asking,
with the limitations of reality.
you're asking questions that relate to design of the entire complex. There are two very big issues here. One issue is town zoning and requirements based on use and occupancy. That's something that has to be discussed. The number you're coming up with, I have no idea where that came from, and I'm not going to question you on that. That is an outrageous number. We are not building a parking lot here. 38 residential units, a 40-seat restaurant, and an amenities building with transient use is nowhere near 100, even 100 spaces.
You go through the town regulations, and do the calculation, and let's see the site plan.
I'm sure we'll be getting to that point. I'm positive we'll get to that point.
Now, as a town member, I think it's important not to lose perspective. The overall picture is the town has a problem. It's been earmarked as the most dangerous building in town. And we're not really talking any other option, but any other option besides having a creative developer come to town is going to cost the town hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So this is his time to share with us his vision, and I personally applaud, what you're doing and your creativity.
Thank you.
He's right. In our zoning bylaw, there is a provision that if you do that kind of calculation, you do wind up with 300 plus parking spaces.
Right.
As they discovered at 211 North Main in that application.
Okay.
But the zoning board of appeals looked at it and said, but there are 3 ways to calculate. And we'll choose this one here, and it'll come up with some more reasonable number.
That's right.
So he's fundamentally correct, but
And I'm not
in.
right. And I'm not questioning his math. But we're talking about is a concept from an entire adaptive reuse that needs to be explored, and there needs to be the gray area. Where do we fall? What do we have to do to fulfill the parking requirements? Clearly, we understand where this gentleman is coming from. There needs to be a gray area somewhere, and we're not even close to that point.
What challenges will the water and septic pose?
From what, does somebody want to address that question?
Well, we've been looking at the reports that the town has done, and we don't have a civil engineer fully engaged in working on that. We know we will need a new septic system, we'll need the reserve area, and the water, obviously, will be added to the building as well, so there have to be some storage tanks and so on. Again, it may relate to acquiring the land next door, so it is a big question that's not resolved, but it's not unlike we faced in a number of other projects.
This problem has happened since 1985. That has been that problem with that property. When it first came on the market and I looked at that property, the issue we had was septic. In fact, in 1985, when I looked at that property, the Quabbin people came out the day we went for our inspection. They went in the building and they flushed red dye down the toilet. And within 2 minutes, it was in the storm drain. They pulled the meters off, shut the water off on that building, and I don't think it's ever been turned back on. So that's always been a problem, the septic issue. Now, rough calculations show that 40,000 square feet's needed for the septic.
For the septic and the reserve.
For the septic and the reserve. There's a lot of land back there to create that kind of use. Now, the Winterwood property for us is a very big issue, not only because of the land that we'd like to have for our parking, but also for possibly a water easement because they have an incredible artesian well. Now, we also haven't explored the well that exists on the Nitchawag property. That has to be evaluated too. So the water and septic, we believe can be resolved. There's a lot of new technology since 1985 when it comes to these kinds of services. And many of you I've walked around town and I've seen have new leach beds and new leach systems. So we need to figure that part out. The part we're at right now is does our plan make sense? Is it something the community can embrace? And what's the next step we do? Yes.
Yes. In some of the responses to questions that you just recently sent to us, one of the items states that the town presently has over $500,000 in a stabilization fund for the benefit of this property. The town needs to be prepared that some of the reserve will need to be applied to this development.
That's right.
Could you elaborate on how you can use the $500,000?
$500,000 is the money that's in reserve. That money is in reserve for a stabilization fund that was to be turned over to help tear down the place. So why don't we dig a hole and throw it in a hole? What we're saying is, as we go forward with this project, we would expect the community will get involved in this project with us. They're going to have a seat on the board. If some of that money is needed to help this project along, that is a very good investment of some of that money with a return by way of taxation. So we don't want you to think that we're coming in here with a Brinks truck. We're coming in here with knowledge and expertise and want to take this into the future. The town does have some reserves, that's public knowledge. If there's a negotiation somewhere, we want you to know, and that was why bringing this up front right from the beginning, that we need to be able to bring that to the table and have a conversation about it.
Right, because you're interested in using that property, and you're also interested in the town being an ongoing condo fee member for the office buildings. You're looking for the Historical Society to rent a condo unit.
Well, that was something somebody had suggested.
That was in there, it's in the responses. And the fire trucks, you're interested in fire department.
We didn't say we were interested in it. We said that there are people. There's been some ask about the fire trucks remaining in the garage. We're not closed to that idea. There's definitely room to talk there. There's been some conversation about space for the Historical Society. We're totally open to discussing that as an option
Right,
for
but
some of that.
they would own a condo.
Everyone in there will own a condo.
Right, and they would be paying the fees.
They would
And
be,
everybody in town would then be, if the town has the office building, everybody in town would then be a condo owner.
your corporation, your town corporation would be the owner. You're just a taxpayer. So
So what I have is.
in essence, you pay the town's bills, you own shares in your town, you support your existing buildings that we're sitting in right now. It's the same kind of an HOA fee that you'd be paying as if this was a condominium, you'd be still lighting it, heating it, and managing it. It'd be the same kind of ownership.
So as a citizen, then I could use the tennis court, or I have to be a member?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure how, again, the point with the residential owners using those facilities, that might mean that we don't have that portion of the HOA fee applied to the town's condominium. So, for example, if there's $50 a month of your homeowners association fee as a residential owner gives you membership to the health club, the town may not have that $50 fee for its office condominium use. But anybody in this room that wanted to go over and buy a membership could absolutely do that. But again, that's probably a fine, I'm glad you brought that question up, because we get into the HOA bylaws at that point.
Paul brought up the questions that we sent out to you, and just wanted to make a note for the town that those will be released to Stephen Boudreau in the next 24 or 48 hours, and we'll have it posted on the town's website, so anybody will view the responses that we sent to you.
Okay. I want to, if I can, I'd like to have Mr. McNeil show you a little bit of technology on a program of how you pre-sell these kinds of condominium units and how technology today is going to assist the brokerage community and assist the development for moving forward. So I want to give a little example of the program.
Michael, when he first got us involved with this, one of the questions he had was actually how do we pre-sell the units and how to help it. But one of the bigger questions for us was, we understand there's a great community involvement in all the projects, so how do we keep in a very transparent way the community involved in the project throughout the design phase, from the time we start measuring to the time actual construction starts. Today we, as architects, we no longer use T-squares and trace paper. We use computers. We no longer produce necessarily CAD drawings or computer-aided drawings. We produce models, independent cyber models. And from those cyber models, we calculate the energy use, we calculate the occupancy, we calculate how much water will be used on the project, how much solar gain. But there's another thing that we can do, is we can share that. And when we share it through an open platform. We either use an ISO device, like an iPad or an iPhone, or an Android device, or your home computer. And what we enable you to do is essentially walk through the project with us as we do it. Now,
This isn't the dishwasher.
No, no, no.
That's what I'm pointing out, and that's not what it's gonna become.
so we have iPad tonight, although
This will be available basically to anybody looking to buy a unit. What do you have available?
For everybody on, in town, who just wants to see what-
Anybody in town wants to see what we're doing?
yeah, so from the start of design, Michael will have a website and we'll actually be loading up the project as we go along. What you can do on the website though, is you'll actually be able to take your finger and you'll be able to move around the project. You will at any time be able to press the button down the corner and pull up the drawings for the project. You'll be able to scan through the drawings. You'll be able to take a drawing, I'll just pick one of the blue dots, for example, and I can open that up. So you'll see the project as we develop it. You can go back to the 3D model from the drawing. You take away the drawing. And there's something else we can do too. We can actually walk through the building. So what we actually do is press the little man down the corner and go forward, and we're going to drop onto the site. There we are on the site. This is going to be interactive all the time. So if someone wants to buy a condominium, they'll be able to walk around the entire building, they'll be able to look inside the unit, walk through the unit, see what they're going to see from their own balcony or window. You as a town will be able to see what we're doing, and you'll be able to comment on that. And I think that's a very important interactive process. So when we walk up into the building, I'm going to go a little faster. And I'm going to slow down. Okay. So when we walk around our building, we actually get to see how we move in the building. And so you can do a couple things with this. One is you can actually walk up the stairs. And it does bounce as you go up the stairs. And you can walk in the room. And you can stroll around the room. I'm a little at a loss here because I'm not using my thumb. We'll go to the thumb now, a little better speed here. And one of the things that we can do with it is we can select a wall, and this is, we can take up the information on that wall. So in the computer system, that wall has a height, a weight, an energy, made of brick, so we know the R value of the wall, we can calculate the energy that passes through it, and we're calculating it not in some test theater, if you will. We're calculating for the actual GPS location of the building for every minute of every day, 365 days of the year. So you get a very interesting printout of what the carbon content of the building is now, the carbon content we're removing, and the carbon content we're adding, or the carbon footprint. We also get a measure of the carbon footprint in its use. So the idea being is that we're going to design the most efficient carbon footprint for this town. One of the things that we can do with that is obviously look at the water collection on the roof, take water off the roof, use gray water in the building. So it's a very interactive process, and we're going to put this out to all of you with an iPad device or a Google or home computer to walk around at the site. And you can comment to Michael on it, and Michael relays that back to us. And you can see the progress of it. And you can see the progress of the fact we can upgrade that and upload the construction process. So even if you're not allowed on the construction site for safety, you can see the components that are being built. More importantly, no matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to buy a unit in Peterson. This technology was used 5 years ago in Oslo, in Norway. They sold out 150 units in 24 hours. One of the things when you go online, and you're walking around in it, you understand too that other people are walking around in it. So it becomes a first offer, first get. And that's a very interesting sell. There's a motivator there to buy if you're interested in it. When you view the thing, you actually start to all of a sudden the way become attached. And so I think it's very interesting. We'll model the whole site. We'll walk around the whole site. You can walk into different rooms.
This also works really well with the amenity center and with the function facility rooms and restaurants. So if you have family members that are looking to have a wedding at the Nijawag, you'll be able to go in and actually have a virtual tour of the site. There are probably apps you can even put a decor in there, and you can design the entire room and the theme party and not do any more until you walk in the door and it's done for you. So the technology of today is so incredible that this is the wave of the future. This is how we're going to expose this to the world.
The interesting, I think, thing for us is that as architects, we're often meeting with people, and drawings, unfortunately, are a language unto themselves, architectural drawings. And a lot of people just have not gotten trained to read them. They're not that complicated, but they haven't gotten trained to read them. So with this, anybody can switch back to the drawing, and they can actually understand the project without necessarily understanding a whole set of 200 pages of architectural drawings. And I think that's a very interesting component of it. And like I say, you just go back to the model at any time, and the drawing stays on the model, and you can spin it. You can zero in. It has the furnishings in it. Has all the information you need to have a really good view of the project. And you can see the site. You can stand inside the window, look outside and see the trees. So that's part of how we're going to market this, but also how we're going to, in a very transparent way, work with it.
So, I'm curious about the timeline. I assume that if your proposal is put forward in front of the town, I'm wondering what level of detail on the project will be available prior to that vote? Will there be a site plan by then, or is what we have right now what we're going to get?
That's something that we have to all talk about, at what level we take this to, without having, how far do we go with absolutely no commitment on the part of the town? So, yeah, there's a lot of information we want you to have, but that information costs money and time. So and again, as a developer, we're trying to find the balance of how much can we, and we've invested to this point a lot of time to get to this point. How much more are we going to be able to do? I'm not sure. We've given the town a list of responsibilities that as the seller, the town needs to do work for. So there's a gray area we haven't found yet. And I mean that by survey work, easement questions, relationships with the library and the Nichawag, zoning, there's a list of zoning requirements. The parking, another issue. Now, to step back in the parking, for example, in my last project in Yarmouth, we did a block of buildings. What we did was we assembled the parking based on demand, not saying, well, you have a 40-seat restaurant, you need 41 parking spaces. We said, your restaurant's hours of operation are this to this, so your high demand for parking is between 5 and 7. Those kinds of negotiations have to happen. So, I guess that's all I can say. You're going to have a show. To what level we take it, I think really is going to the discussions we have with the select board and how serious the town is for us to really be able to be the developer. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm interpreting it as pretty much what we have now is what we're going to get.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, without some commitment.
Well, I mean, again, we're businessmen. How much do we invest to put a presentation together to the town without having any guarantee that you may say, we're going to tear it down?
Right,
So-
but what we have right now really doesn't have much to tear.
I don't really have an answer for you beyond that. I mean, what you have right now is a vacant building with a huge demolition price tag. What we're coming to you with is an opportunity, and if there's some kind of assurance with the town as we go for the next few months, of course, we're going to continue to work very hard to put the project in place. But for anybody to expect all of us to draw a set of plans on 2 walkthroughs, which is impossible, and be able to give you any more spec details than what we've only had. We've had 4 hours in the building in 6 months. In order to do a series of drawings on this building, it could take 2 weeks. We had enough trouble just getting in there for 2 hours yet today. I can't imagine if we went to the town selectmen and said we need 2 weeks to draw full-scale drawings. So again, it's about how far is the town willing to go and where do we meet in the middle? That's the answer.
The parking issue keeps coming up, but there's also a broader parking issue. There's almost no good parking area around the common, and for the library in particular, we're having more problems with people parking up against tree roots and all of this sort of thing. But there is space behind the parking, which is probably part of this property, the Nichawang property. Is there any thought to having kind of a joint parking area where people could come to the library, enter through the back?
Yes.
and-
We don't want cars on the common.
Right.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, right now we do because
Right.
we don't have.
Yes, we don't want cars on the common, even for the library. We can,
Benefit both.
we want to benefit both.